part 4, where I'm going to be covering how you can create your own inbeds to add into your candles. Inbeds is a term that is used for items that you make to add into your candle wax. So I've got this candle here and it's a little cake candle, and I've used some inbeds on the top to decorate it with. So inbeds generally are made from other types of wax or the same kind of wax, and it's just to add decoration into your candle pieces. When making inbeds out of wax, you'll most commonly find that they are made with silicone molds. Now there are some plastic molds out there on the market, but personally I prefer silicone molds. One, they're reusable, you can use them quite a lot until they eventually will break down. You can get tons of different shapes and different items just searching online. Amazon has tons of these with all sorts. Whatever you can dream of, you can probably find a silicone mold for that. So I've got a strawberry one here, a mandarin one, and also a peony flower mold. Now I like using the silicone molds because one, they're flexible and the wax doesn't stick to them, so they're really easy to get out once the wax has set. And also too, you just have so many different sizes, styles and shapes that you can get in your silicone mold inbeds. Now when I do make my inbeds, I generally make them quite in bulk in all the different colors that I want, and then I store them in a container like this. I personally prefer to make all of my inbeds before I start making my candles. Otherwise you will find to make a candle like this, the process is going to be very long because making these inbeds is a completely different step. So I generally will spend a day, if I know I'm going to be making some candles like this one, and make all of my inbeds beforehand. Now inbeds can be made from a few different types of waxes. The 3 types of waxes that I like to use when I am creating my inbeds are paraffin wax, soy pillar wax, and white beeswax. So I like paraffin wax because it does set with that semi-translucentness that you don't get from a soy wax or a beeswax, because soy and beeswax do set quite opaque. So you can get some really different effects when you do use your paraffin wax. So if you are doing fruit and it's fruit that has that sort of translucent like your citruses, paraffin wax can be very helpful. And you can see I've got the same type of mold, but one is in soy, one is in paraffin. The soy has set with that white base and is opaque, so I'll get more of a pastel tone coming through, and this has set in that paraffin wax, and it's giving me more realistic when it comes to them. So paraffin wax can be really helpful if you are doing more translucent pieces that you want to look a bit more translucent. Then you have your soy pillar wax. Soy pillar wax is great for like items like chocolate, because chocolate is creamy and opaque. So I do use my soy pillar wax a lot for that. And you know, you can do it in strawberries and blueberries because these are opaque items as well, even though they are fruit. Now I can also do a blend of beeswax and soy wax. So if you don't have soy pillar wax on hand, you can always do a blend of 100% soy container wax with beeswax. Now personally, I like to do about 40% beeswax, 60% soy wax. The reason why beeswax works so well when you do it in a blend is because beeswax naturally contracts when it does set, but 100% soy wax doesn't contract that much when it does set. So if you do use 100% soy wax, the stuff that is designed for containers, you'll find it will be a bit hard to get them out of the molds when you do need to do that. So by mixing in and blending some beeswax through, because beeswax does contract, you're going to be able to get items that will come out and they'll stay hard. Soy wax can be, 100% soy wax can be quite a soft wax, and you might find that when you do pull them out, you'll damage your items. Like this one is being made out of 100% soy wax, and when I pulled it out, I damaged it. But when I do make items like this, where I have a blend of beeswax and soy wax, I find that they're really easy to get out of the molds because they contract, they don't stick to the molds, and they're a lot harder. So I generally find that works really well. Now, soy pillar wax is designed to contract, so it's very different from soy container wax, and that is also suitable. So soy pillar wax is generally a blend. It either has paraffin through it or it'll have beeswax through it. So you can use either 3 depending on what you were going for. I'm going to do one with paraffin. I'm going to make one with my soy pillar wax. but you can always use your beeswax. Now obviously if you're going to use beeswax and blend it through, you don't want to go for your natural beeswax, not the full yellow beeswax, because everything will have a yellow undertone. You want to look for the white palette beeswax, because that way whatever colors you add on top are going to be those colors. You're not going to have that yellow undertone. The first step that you need to do if you are going to be working with silicone molds is you need to give them a clean. You can either pop them in the dishwasher or hand wash them to clean them, or if you want to do a really quick clean, you just want to use some alcohol spray just to disinfect them, take off any residue that might be there from previous candles, and then give them a really good wipe out with some paper towel. For the first embed that I'm going to be making today, I'm going to be using the Eco Soy Pillar Wax. So this wax needs to be melted around 75 degrees and then poured around 60 degrees. Now, for the first one, I'm not going to color it because I do want it to be white on the tips. I'm going to be checking my temperature. And right now it's sitting on 55. So as long as it's under 60, it is fine to be poured. So I'm just going to be pouring that into my mold. Now, if you pour wax too hot into your mold, what can happen is that you might end up damaging your mold and you'll have a mold that breaks a lot faster. Now I'm going to let this sit for a bit, about 10 minutes, maybe a bit longer depending on the temperature of your room. And I'm going to be doing a two-tone flower. So what I'm going to be doing first is white tips on all of the petals, and then I'm going to be tipping out the excess of this wax back into my jar, reheating my wax back up, adding color into it and pouring it back in. I'm going to get a really beautiful transition of color going from white to soft pink on my embed. So this is the perfect point where it's just starting to cover up. I'm going to break all of the top of the wax off, and then I'm going to pour all of this liquid wax back in to my container. So I've just gotten the majority of that white wax out, but I've just left it around the edges. Now I'm going to color the wax that I've just scooped out. Again, I'm going to reheat it back up to the correct temperature, color it with the desired color that I want, and then I'm going to pour it back into the mold, and that's going to give me a really cool ombre effect. Once again, if you want to know what color your wax is going to be when it does set, we do need to put it onto something white because we're using soy wax, and soy wax sets with a white base. So I'm just going to grab my paddle pop stick and drip some out. And I think I want to go a little bit stronger, a little bit more burgundy, so another little drop and mix that through. And it's sitting at 57, so that's a great temperature to pour it into my mold. Just like that, perfect. Now I'm just going to let this set, and once it starts to get a little bit frosted, then I'm going to show you how you can add in your wick so that way it can be slid down through the center of your candle. I've got my paraffin wax all melted down. Now paraffin wax does have a slightly different pour and melt temperature than soy wax does. So with this particular paraffin wax, it needs to be melted around 80 to 85 degrees and then poured around 65 to 70 degrees is its ideal pouring temperature. I've also measured out the amount of fragrance that I'm going to need to fill up these 4 strawberry molds. Now I'm going with a berry fragrance because I'm making strawberry embeds. Now you don't necessarily have to fragrance your embeds if you don't want to, but if you do want to, it's kind of cute to match it with the type of fruit. Now I'm going to be using these on another soy candle that has already like a vanilla fragrance to it. So a berry and vanilla is going to smell really nice when the embeds do melt down into my soy wax candle base. So I'm going to wait for this to cool down just a little bit more because it is still a tiny bit hot before I add in my coloring and my fragrance and pour it into my mold. So my paraffin wax is sitting at 77 degrees, so it's a great time to add in some of my dye. I'm going to be using my candle wax dyes, which you can find on my Amazon store. Now these are great to add into paraffin wax because they are paraffin based. I've got a cherry red candle wax dye, which I think is going to be a really beautiful color for my strawberries. And I just like to use my grater, and I'm just going to grate a little bit off. Now these do need to be melted at a higher temperature, so if you do add them into soy wax, you do need to do it while the wax is still on the heat. But because my paraffin wax is already still quite hot, it's around that 77 degrees, you're going to see that it melts in so fast into the paraffin wax. So I'm going to add a little bit in, give that a mix through, and make sure I'm happy with that color. Now, adding fragrance into your inbeds is completely optional. If you do have inbeds that are fruit-based, sometimes it is nice to match that fragrance to it, but you have to remember that you will be adding these on to another candle. So if you're already going to be fragrancing the base of that candle, you might not need to fragrance your inbeds, or you might not want to because it might give too much of a contrasting smell or not blend well. Now with this one, I'm going to be doing a vanilla base to my candle, so I've added in some berry fragrance into my paraffin wax because the berry fragrance is going to go really well with these inbeds. And then when the berry fragrance melts down into my vanilla wax, I'm still going to get a really beautiful smelling candle. But adding fragrance into inbeds is completely optional. And with paraffin wax, I'm going to be doing probably about 4% fragrance. So my paraffin wax is at a correct temperature to pour, and I'm happy with the color. So all I need to do is just to pour it into my inbed molds. If you do go slightly over when you're pouring it, if you've got plastic on your table, you can always just scrape that excess off to ensure that you're going to get a nice flat bottom to your inbeds. So we're going to let those cool down and set. It'll probably take about 20 minutes to half an hour today. And I've got wax left over, so once those set, I can do some more, pull those out, melt this wax back down, and repeat the process. Now with my flower mold, because I am going to be sticking my wick through the center because it's quite large and it's going to take up the majority of my container, we need to add a space for that wick to go. So I like to use a metal skewer, and I'm just going to place it right down the center and push it to the bottom, and then I'm going to leave that metal skewer in to set. Now you don't want to do this too soon. You do need to wait for the majority of the candle to start to set. If I did this too soon, this will probably just flop straight over because the wax would still be too liquidy inside to hold it. Now if you do it too late, your wax will start to dry and it's going to get more brittle, and you've got chances of breaking your flower. So doing it when it's just started to set is the perfect time to add in your spot for your wick. Once my candle does set, because this is metal, it will pull straight out. These have had time to set, so now I can demold them. So the strawberries are really easy to pop out, just like that. And any little bits of wax that are on your mold will just peel straight off. I'm going to give this a bit of a twist, pull it up, it comes straight out. That's why we want to have metal skewers. Wood skewers would grip. And then I'm just going to pull this away. Now you do have to be a bit more delicate with your flower molds because the petals do poke out and they can easily break off. So I'm just going to use my heat gun to melt the top layer of my wax in my container that I've already prepared. So that way when I do place my flower down, it's going to hold into place. You don't need to melt much, just enough that the wax will then hold. And then I'm going to slide my wick through my hole that I've already made. And I'm going to place my flower down. I've just placed the flower down through the wick. I can now trim my wick a bit shorter so that way it's at a nice height. And I have a really stunning candle, and it's so easy to add these embeds in. And I really love like the ombre and the two different coloured pinks coming through. I feel like it makes just a run-of-the-mill soy candle that little bit more special.